Republicans leading in the Senate may save America from Democratic one-party rule. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button. Today, obviously, we're going to be talking about the 2020 election results, and obviously the presidential race is still too close to call, although we may be getting more news on that very, very soon, with races trending towards Biden in Michigan and Wisconsin, perhaps towards Trump in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. And then Nevada is a complete toss-up right now. The margin there is very, very interesting and could go Trump's way should the remainder 14% of the vote start to go Trump's way, because he's only down by 8,000 votes in the state of Nevada. In Georgia, the margin just moved here. President Trump appears to be leading by about 83,000 votes with 93% reporting. This is updated information from the New York Times. In North Carolina, 95% reporting. Trump is up by about 80,000 votes. And Pennsylvania is very, very interesting. President Trump is doing extremely well there with 80% reporting and about a 450,000 vote margin for President Trump right now. There's a lot of vote to still come in out of the Philadelphia area, but also across the state. But it's thought that this is going to trend towards Biden towards the end, and President Trump could once again repeat in Pennsylvania, though. I think he has a good chance of doing that. But Biden might have the edge here with more absentee ballots to be counted. In Michigan, with 94% reporting, again, this is trending towards Biden. President Trump had won a historic upset in 2016 with winning Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And this time it looks like Michigan and Wisconsin are trending towards Biden this time. And it's a very narrow path for President Trump to pull that one out. And again, Nevada, this could all come down to Nevada, believe it or not, the sleeper state of the 2020 election. If President Trump has any chance, if he's not going to win Michigan, if he's not going to win Wisconsin, and Trump were to hold Georgia and North Carolina, his only possible path to 270 is by winning Pennsylvania and by winning Nevada. That would take him to 275 electoral college votes. Now, the Trump campaign is still saying there's a possibility that Arizona could come back into the Trump column by some very narrow margin, I would think. But we'll see there. But if everything stands as has already been called and what's trending right now, Nevada and Pennsylvania is the last chance President Trump has to be reelected in 2020. And so, again, the race is very, very interesting right now. And if I had to bet, I'd say Biden has an advantage right now. And is likely to oust President Trump, because who knows what's going to happen in Nevada. And the absentee votes have been trending in the blue wall, Rust Belt states, all towards Biden. It flipped Michigan and Wisconsin. It's nearly flipped North Carolina, and it may even flip Georgia. So if Trump were to lose, it's going to be because Biden overperformed in these absentee ballots in these states. Trump seems to have mitigated that in Florida and probably also North Carolina by having a better early voting turnout operation, which I suppose in Florida it makes sense with seniors voting. A greater percentage of the population is older in Florida, so they're more equipped and used to dealing with absentee ballots and early voting and things like that. Whereas in the pandemic, the northern states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, this is a clear level of underperformance where if the Trump campaign had simply had a better early voting turnout operation and absentee ballot operation, Biden would not be eating into Trump's election day returns. On the other hand, because President Trump had an election day focus in terms of turnout, he may have put the Senate into the Republican column, and he may have flipped a few House seats towards the Republicans. And if I think the combination of the two, the way Trump won Florida was by boosting early turnout and boosting election day turnout. That's the best of both worlds. And they probably just needed to replicate that across the entire country and certainly into these battleground states. If Trump, say he fails and Biden wins, that could be lessons learned, basically. I can't say Trump was fundamentally wrong, because maybe the best way to boost election day turnout was to cast doubt on the efficacy in Republican states of casting votes by mail. And it's quite possible President Trump boosted election turnout from what it would have been had he been banking simply on mail-in votes, whereas Democrats appear to have increased turnout substantially with their mail-in votes. So I think there's basically two different strategies, and there are merits on both sides. And in the Republican case, if you assume that Trump might not have been reelected anyways, and most of the polls said Trump had no chance whatsoever, but he carried Ohio decisively by 8 points, up by more than 4 points. In Florida, he wins there. And North Carolina. These were states that many Democratic polls and mainstream polls were showing that President Trump had absolutely no chance of being competitive. Instead, President Trump has gotten more votes than any Republican candidate in history. Joe Biden's gotten more votes than any candidate in presidential history. This is 2020, an election for the ages. This is probably the most incredible turnout we've ever seen. And it's also in a very exceptional election, as we're about to dive into here. Republicans in the Senate have carried key races and are standing poised to maintain the Senate majority. And this is critical right now. It's 48 to 44. You have to count the other two independents. So really it's 48-46. And then there's just a few Senate seats that are still up for grabs here in North Carolina. In Georgia, there's 2 seats. Michigan, that's a potential Republican pickup. And then in Arizona, Martha McSally is not yet conceded, but it seems likely that she's going to lose there. But you never know. Maybe the Trump campaign knows what it's talking about. And then Alaska's still outstanding, but we're presuming that he's going to win Alaska. Dan Sullivan. Republicans have won key races in South Carolina, Iowa, Montana. They've retaken the Alabama Senate seat, and at the moment appear to be leading in Michigan, Georgia. They've won Maine, and Tom Tillis in North Carolina has claimed victory. We'll see if that sticks. And Democrats have picked up Arizona and Colorado. So Democrats are +1 right now. If John James wins in Michigan, they'll be at +0. And either way, it seems Republicans are going to hold the Senate. They just called Susan Collins in Maine the winner. And so this is a very exceptional outcome, though. Every time the Democrats have won the White House, they sweep a trifecta of the House, the Senate, and the White House. They get absolute control, one-party rule for at least the first 2 years of their administrations. And this dates back to Woodrow Wilson in 1912. He got the trifecta. In 1932, FDR pulled it off. In 48, Truman did it. Kennedy pulled it off in 1960. Lyndon Johnson did it in 1964. Jimmy Carter did it in 1976. Bill Clinton did it in 1992. And Barack Obama did it in 2008. Joe Biden, will, if he wins, will be the first Democratic president elected since Grover Cleveland in 1884 not to win the Senate and the House. He will be the weakest Democratic first-termer in more than a century. It's an unbelievable outcome. Like, you could flip a coin, I don't know how many times, and you would get this outcome in terms of just what a precarious position the President Biden would find himself in, I think, not being able to enact his agenda. Again, you have to go all the way back to 1884 for the last time a Democrat won the White House but didn't carry both houses of Congress. And so, again, I think this makes Biden, if he wins, a very weak president-elect. He's going to have to work with Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, he's going to go down as one of the greatest majority leaders in Senate history. Maybe they should name one of the office buildings after him after he retires, because not only has he done this very unlikely thing, which is to maintain a Senate majority in a year where the incumbent president may be ousted. In addition to that, he's cemented a 6-3 Republican-appointed Supreme Court majority, and there are several other, I think, accomplishments that he has under his belt. And I just think that Mitch McConnell, what an outcome for him. And his wife, Secretary of Transportation, Elaine Chao, I'm sure she's very proud of what Senator McConnell has accomplished here. But this is just an unbelievable, I think, outcome here. And we're not counting Trump out of it yet. Again, Nevada, the Trump campaign seems to think they have a pathway in Nevada. And they seem very confident about holding Pennsylvania from 4 years ago. And again, that takes Trump to 270. So I'm not saying that Trump is lost. I'd say the odds are against him. This is a very difficult path to carry Nevada. Republicans didn't carry Nevada 4 years ago. Obviously, they carried Pennsylvania. And just gee whiz. I mean, if someone had told me Trump's going to win Ohio by 8 points and Florida by more than 4 points, and he's going to win North Carolina, I would say, yep, he's on his way, because 90% of the time on Ohio alone, if the president or any presidential candidate wins Ohio, 90% of the time in elections dating back to 1860, 36 out of 40 contests, does the person who wins Ohio win the election. And you got 1960, John Kennedy, that's the last time that happened there. And again, only 4 circumstances going back to 1860. So I always thought if this happened, if Trump loses and he won Ohio, that Biden was going to have a very thin margin indeed, and he might not even claim the Senate, and that he would be a weak president because he wouldn't have majorities in both houses of Congress. And this may be what actually happens going forward. But this is what it means. If Biden doesn't have the Senate, he can't implement his agenda. The Biden-Harris agenda will be practically dead on arrival. No eliminating the filibuster. No amending the Judiciary Act of 1869 to pack the Supreme Court. No fast-tracking of judicial appointments in general in lower courts. Republicans can slow that down as much as they want. No Green New Deal. No statehood for D.C. and Puerto Rico. No bans on hydraulic fracturing, at least not from Congress. No national, congressionally imposed lockdown. No tax hikes. No public option socialized medicine. And on down the line. You take all the wish list that Democrats in Congress were going to have. Nancy Pelosi is going to have to work with Mitch McConnell, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And she's going to have perhaps a smaller majority. Maybe Democrats pick up a few seats, but I think Republicans in the midterms, should Trump lose, will be very well positioned to reclaim the House as well. And that would make it basically a 4-year proposition for Biden, where he won't be able to have majorities in both houses. And so he's not going to be able to get much done legislatively. It's going to look like 2011 through 2016 of the Obama administration, basically, where they weren't able to get much done. You had a few deals on spending and things like that, but there were no huge legislative accomplishments. And so Biden would have to be totally reliant upon the administrative state, regulations, things like that. Yeah, you're going to make some court picks and maybe negotiate some treaties. There will be foreign policy. But Biden could be, if he wins, a very inconsequential president in terms of moving the agenda forward, the so-called progressive agenda, or the just what Pelosi wants to do. She's not going to be in a position to impose her will upon Mitch McConnell, unless she can pick up a few Republican votes on key issues. But it's going to be watered down. It's going to be moderated, and it's not going to be what they wanted to do, especially when Biden was threatening to pack the Supreme Court. His refusal to answer the question on whether he would pack the Supreme Court, I think that resulted in ticket splitting in Georgia. I think a lot of Georgians voted for Joe Biden, but then they voted for the Republican in the Senate. In Maine, we know that happened, where Maine voters largely voted for Joe Biden, but then they voted for Susan Collins because they wanted a check on Joe Biden's power grab, I think, on the court packing. I think that ruined his chances of picking up the Senate. In short, Biden might not have much of a mandate to govern. It all gets held up, the entire agenda. Instead, Biden will be forced to contend with McConnell, who decisively won his own re-election bid. Now, here's an example. Democrats might find themselves wishing they had done a deal on the Phase 4 stimulus with President Trump before the election, because the deal they're going to get now, I don't think it's going to be as good. I think that Senate Republicans are far less willing to do a big spending bill than President Trump was. President Trump wanted to run up the numbers. He said, think big, I want a big stimulus. Senate Republicans, I don't think they're going to want to deal with that as much. They're going to want to taper that down a lot more than what President Trump was asking. President Trump was giving Pelosi a good deal. And who knows? That might have cost Democrats the Senate as well. There's no way to know in hindsight, but even if Biden ekes out a victory here, he's likely to get much less from the Republican Senate. And I'll leave you with the close here. Again, the results are not all in yet, either for the Senate or the White House. It's too close to call, and with so many ballots left to be counted, too early to say. As the nation watches to see what happens in the White House, though, the American people should be keeping their eyes on the Senate, which Republicans appear to be holding. At the end of the day, it may be the only thing keeping us from the jaws of Democratic one-party rule. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, dailytorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a good day.